In Virginia, marijuana arrests hit Black and brown communities the hardest. Studies show in places like Richmond and Hanover County, Black residents were up to 3.5 times more likely than white residents to be arrested for the same offenses. And while Virginia became the first southern state to legalize marijuana, that progress didn't happen by accident. Behind that fight was a Richmond native who saw a moment and created a movement.
More of the protesting world really came into my life, particularly when we started to see police shootings and murders on TV news more and more. So Trayvon Martin's story really got to me. Sandra Bland, she's a soror. That story really inspired me to get more involved and find out what was happening locally here. From there, I joined organizations. A lot of my, the roots, the foundation that's really made me is in abolition work.
Her work laid the foundation for what would become marijuana justice, a push to repeal the prohibition of cannabis and repair the harm done to thousands of Virginians. In 2019, after a scandal involving Governor Northam's yearbook photo during Black History Month, Chelsea and other activists saw an opening, a way to demand repair, not just apologies.
And many of us were like, what can we do to press the issue, to actually give him something to do right now that can stop the harm right now? Because he started going on this apology tour to Black people in Virginia. And I was like, don't apologize, actually bring some repair. What are you going to do about this?
That moment sparked Marijuana Justice, an organization pushing to end arrests, expunge records, and reinvest in communities most impacted.
We decided to launch Marijuana Justice and really push for stopping the harm that was coming to Virginia, because people didn't realize that 20 to 30,000 people a year were being arrested for small amounts of marijuana. So people were losing their lives, and 20,000 to 30,000 people a year, and said, you could stop that right now, Governor.
By 2021, their work helped pass legalization, making Virginia the first in the South. Thousands of records were sealed, but access still limited. Virginia has no regulated market, leaving adults to navigate gray areas and untested products.
People think that they'll see a dispensary, the bright lights, the tobacco shops. That's not a marijuana or cannabis dispensary. And we are the only state in the nation that has this type of setup where it's legal to consume and smoke, but there's nowhere for adults to purchase it. And so there's this gap right now that everyone is just kind of ignoring, that of course we are still patroning and supporting the underground market. We have to.
And while laws have changed, the impact of the war on drugs remains. For years, young people, specifically Black youth, were pulled into the system early, even before the age of 25. Kenneth Hunter was one of them.
I grew up in this really poor, but, financially poor, but morally rich household. And, it was just one of those things where I guess you kind of get sheltered so much that when you get let out, it goes kind of crazy.
Hunter grew up in a strict religious home in Lynchburg, but after he left, he didn't have a support system and had to navigate his teenage years largely on his own.
I was young and naive, and I landed in the streets. I wasn't even ready for the streets. I was never like a hard gangster guy, none of that. No, I wasn't really ready for the streets. But the streets are merciless, and it didn't take time for me to realize I was going to have to make some changes to be able to survive out there.
By 15, he began selling small amounts when a friend introduced him to what they called a 50 deal.
And what it would mean is I spend $50 and he would give me 5 20 rocks. And you sell those for $20 a piece, and your $50 becomes $100. And that was literally my introduction into drugs. And I always tell people that selling drugs is just as addictive or more addictive than the drug itself. A kid spending $50 and making $100, you couldn't tell me that I wasn't the richest dude in the world.
But 4 years later, a police search changed everything.
I had quite a bit of drugs, quite a bit of money, and it was all over my house. And so they found it, and they locked me up, and they sentenced me to 23 years, 9 months, and 75 days.
In court, he was painted as a kingpin, a story that didn't match his reality.
There were much more bigger dealers than me. But inside that courtroom, you would have thought that I was El Chapo. There was an extreme exaggeration of what I had done. what I was known for, and all of those things. And even in terms of the marijuana, like I wasn't distributing marijuana, but yet they used that to build this picture of me as this guy that distributed all kinds of substance throughout the greater Lynchburg area.
At 21 years old, Hunter entered Red Onion, a supermax prison, facing a sentence that would change his life forever.
I was detached from reality. I couldn't believe that I had 23 years. I had been sentenced to more time than I had been on the earth. I was only 21. I had just got married, and I just found out that I was a father. I was incarcerated when I found out. I'd been locked up about 8 months, and I found out that I was the father of a 8-month-old beautiful girl, and there was so much uncertainty.
I also spoke with advocate Vicki Williams-Cullens and attorney Maxie Lawton, who say marijuana has long been treated like a hard drug.
The more I learned about the cannabis industry, the more I learned that it was important to deschedule it because they have it scheduled at the same level as heroin. It is not there.
They treated marijuana like it was the big bad boy. Weed isn't on that level of heroin, crack, cocaine. It's not on that level at all. It is on the level as alcohol.
Decades of propaganda portrayed users as lawbreakers instead of everyday people.
And so in order to criminalize those people, they criminalized the plant. And you had to have terrible stories for people to get scared.
And they assume that if someone consumes cannabis, they cannot be educated, they cannot be well read, they cannot be well spoken, they cannot be law abiding. So, it's important to realize that a lot of this is propaganda.
The impact of these narratives is still felt today in the lives of people like Kenneth Hunter. Hunter has been home for 4 years, and he's now an organizer, a policy advocate, and a grandfather, using his story to push for change. For advocates like Chelsea and people like Kenneth, the work continues. But in Virginia, the push for repair and for justice is already shaping a new future. In Richmond, I'm Trinity Polk.